welcome back to Gen Con 2015. We're in the Stonemaier Games room, and we're going to talk about Scythe with designer and publisher Jamie Stegmaier. Jamie?
Hey, thanks for coming by, Joel.
Thanks for showing me this game. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, we've been doing blind playtest and playtest here at Gen Con. Not blind playtest, but we're in the middle of blind playtesting, and we're doing playtesting here at Gen Con of Scythe, which is a 4X game of farming and mech combat set in an alternate history 1920s Eastern Europe. You started looking at the box. The art of this game is done by artist and kind of world builder Jacob Rolzalski, who's located in Poland, and he's hopefully working on the art right now while I'm at Gen Con. What you're looking at now is a prototype version of the game with temporary graphic design and mostly placeholder art, but like the board that you're looking at right now does have roughly final art on it. You can see what you're looking at are the 5 different factions on the board. You have the Nordic faction up here, the Rusviet faction down there, the Crimean faction down south, the Saxons over here, and Polania. So these are roughly based on, you know, Scandinavians, Russians, Crimeans, actual Crimeans, Germans, and Polish. The idea in this game is that after the First World War, which was fueled by mechs created at this factory in the middle of the board, after that World War, the factory shut down, and all of the factions in the surrounding area decided that they wanted to converge upon this patch of land and take it over and kind of build their own empire, learn from the technology at the factory, and kind of almost become the richest. So the goal of the game is to have the greatest fortune and be the richest. You're kind of looking at, we have 3D printed miniatures printed by Shapeways. These are roughly what the final versions will look like. The actual final versions will look like this printout here. We've been refining them for a couple months now just to make sure we get the miniatures right. We've heard a lot about miniatures. This is our first miniatures game, or game with miniatures. We've heard a lot about companies who have delays related to miniatures. We're trying to avoid those delays by working on them in advance.
Yeah, these are really nice for a prototype for sure. I mean, they're great.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So can you give us like a sort of a simple turn breakdown and sort of the overarching how you're going to get your money and your victory points and that kind of thing?
Yeah, we can walk through a couple turns and see how that works. Yeah, so actually with in this game, money is the same as victory points, so that's the whole point of the game in the end.
Okay.
A typical turn, so you're looking at the faction map for Polania here, and you're looking at the player map down here. They work pretty similar to like a Terra Mystica map in that the things that you can see that aren't covered up are the benefits in green and the costs are in red. The things that are covered up can, through different actions, be removed to make benefits better and make something cost less. So that's what I just did is an upgrade. If you take an upgrade action, you get to move a cube from a benefit over to a cost, making something better and making something cost less. So a typical turn, say if we had the Polish turn here, there are these 4 sections of the player map. And on your turn, you'll put your action token on one of those 4 sections, and you'll take either the bottom action, or the top action, or the bottom action, or you'll take both. Right now we're at the beginning of the game, and so the factions don't have enough resources to take the bottom actions, so the Polish faction would just take the top action, which says they can move 2 different units. So they can move, this is the Polish faction, so they can move, say, a worker over here, so he can later produce more workers, and you can move your character over here towards this encounter token.
Okay.
The encounters are kind of the fun, I wouldn't say a mirror thrash, but kind of thematic side of the game, where when your character arrives at an encounter, they have a situation happen with the locals, and they get to decide between 3 different choices. So usually when you draw an encounter card, you kind of show the table what it looks like, you show the situation that's happening, and then you read the thematic text out loud to say, hey, these are my choices. I'm going to treat these people well, or I'm going to do something kind of evil, but get an immediate benefit out of it.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
And then so these different, I see there's different icons in this. Obviously they produce different resources like workers and oil. and different things like that.
Yeah, there's a production action that lets you, basically you pick 2 different hexes, and each worker on those hexes is going to produce one of the resources. So if we took the production action right now, say I'll put out another worker just so we can have one out there. So if I produced right now and I chose these 2 hexes to produce on, these 2 workers, each of them would produce 1 wood, and this guy would produce 1 grain.
Okay.
And you might be able to see here on the board, each of the starting areas are landlocked by a river.
Okay.
There are 5 basic territories on the board that produce resources, and so each faction only starts with 3 of them. So to get access to, like the Polish faction here, they don't have access to oil on the tundras or metal on the mountains. So they either need to expand out of their home area, they have to unlock some upgrades to get out, or they can use a trade action to trade for things that they don't have access to.
Okay. So is it a turn is like discrete actions? You take one action, I take an action? Or?
It's turn by turn. It's not simultaneous. So
Okay.
yeah, you'll take an action, then it'll just go around the table.
Okay.
It's similar to Euphoria, where there's no rounds in the game. You kind of just take turns until the end game is triggered.
Okay. And then what are a couple other different actions here? It looks like you can do some engineering and
The trade action here, so you can just pay money to get either resources or popularity. There's the produce action where you pay this cost. Right now there's no cost, and then you produce on 2 hexes. Over here is the bolster action, which is how you get more power or combat cards.
Yeah.
These are the resources that you spend in combat.
Okay.
Power is tracked on that track down in the bottom right of the board.
Okay.
And combat cards are kind of similar to Kemet, where you, I can kind of show you how combat works. So in combat, you have these combat cards where you decide on the dial how much power you want to spend in combat. So say you choose 3, and then you can slip cards back here based on the number of combat units you have in the combat to add to that total power, and then you just reveal who has greater power.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
So that's quite like Dune. If you play that.
Like Rex, Rex
Yeah.
Dune, and Kemet,
Nice.
And then those are all the basic actions. Those are the top row actions. The bottom row actions are kind of the fun ones.
Okay.
That cost stuff. So the upgrade is the one where I said where you can pick up a cube from anywhere on your player mat from a benefit, and you move it over to make something cost less.
Okay.
This is the mech action down here. You deploy a mech. So you get to choose one of your 4 mechs, any of them. They each have an individual asymmetric ability. So each faction has 4 different mech abilities. You'll pick up one of those mechs and you just put it on the board.
Okay.
And that's actually something I kind of skipped over here. Everything you do in the game, when it interacts with the map, it goes on the map. Like your resources are kept on the map.
Okay.
Everything's out here on the map, so everything's kind of up for grabs. Like a real-time, real spatial element out here.
Gotcha. So if somebody moves in and takes over that spot, they get the wood.
They get the wood, yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool.
The third action down here is building structures. So this is like the empire building aspect of the game. You can build these structures out on the board. And the last one is the recruit action, where you're kind of adding more people to your crew. The recruits are these cylindrical tokens. So when you recruit, you'll pick up one of these tokens, you'll put it down here for a one-time bonus, and then from then on, this little icon says whenever you or the player to your immediate left or right takes this action, you get that bonus. So kind of an adjacency thing, kind of like Seven Wonders a little bit.
Sure.
That adjacency.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so how do you get money out of all this?
How do you get money out? Well, some of the bottom row actions have money. That's the money icon. So when you upgrade, you might get some money. You get money during the game. Actually, there aren't a ton of ways to get money. A lot of it's at the end of the game, just based on your popularity. So if you look at this chart here, at the end of the game, you'll score for each star you have. Stars are these achievements that you can achieve during the game. That's what triggers the end game. For each star that you have, for each territory you control, and for every 3 resources you control, you get coins depending on how popular you are at the end of the game. Popularity is kind of how the people of this land view you at the end of your mission. If you're very likable, then you're going to get more points for each of those things. If you're not very likable, you're not going to get a lot of, well, I'd say points, they're coins. You're not going to get a lot of coins from it.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joel.